The best-selling motorcycle of 2025 is back to defend its crown with an all-new glow-up. I am, of course, talking about this, the 2025 Yamaha NMAX. Being such a popular bike, you're probably thinking, why does this even need a review? But there are some new changes, along with a few things that have come over from the previous model that you might not know about. So I'm here to break all those down for you and to review the bike. So let's start with what really matters, the engine. Now this bike is powered by the same 125cc engine from the previous model, but with a couple of tweaks to make it Euro 5 Plus compatible. Now Yamaha claims 128 miles to the gallon with this blue core engine, but in real world conditions, probably around 100 miles to the gallon is a bit more realistic.
Now it also has this automatic cutoff, so there's now no engine noise whatsoever. For a bike that already gives you over 100 miles to the gallon, it makes you wonder why it needs that as well, but it's there. Then you just twist the throttle and it restarts. Of course, if you don't want that, you can just press the little button on the right and turn it off.
This will essentially turn off the engine while the bike is stationary at things like traffic lights or junctions, and then just at the twist of the throttle, it will reactivate the engine and you can carry on riding. Now the feather in the NMAX's cap is the VVA, or Variable Valve Actuation. Using a switchable cam setup, the VVA essentially gives the NMAX an almost flat torque curve.
So you can see the VVA kicking in there on the dash, and the variable valve actuator. And that just changes from a low cam to a high cam. So once the bike hits a certain RPM, it switches from the low cam to the high cam. It means that in very low revs, so for example pulling away, it works on the low cam, which is going to give us more torque, and on the high cam is going to give us better fuel economy and slightly lower revs at higher speed. So let's just see how well she accelerates away from these traffic lights. Look at that, pretty quick.
The 2025 NMAX has had a styling update, bringing it in line much more with Yamaha's premium scooter line, the X-Max family. The front end seems a little bit more vertical than the previous model, and the lines are a lot more premium, a lot sharper than before. The indicators now have also been integrated into the bodywork, along with a whole new lighting update, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. And Yamaha have also added these protector parts on the underside and the bottoms of the bike to help with things like stone chips and damage from general wear and tear and riding. Two colours are available this year. We have the Icon Black in a satin finish and blue wheels, and also the Milky White, which comes in a gloss finish with black wheels. Now, one of the standout features of the NMAX is the 2-channel ABS system that it has on board. While a lot of 125 scooters will come with ABS, not all ABS setups are created equally. This 2-channel system operates both front and rear wheels separately, giving you anti-lock-up control on both wheels depending on which is about to lock up. Now, switchable traction control is still on board from the previous model. This is going to help prevent wheel slippage on things like wet drains, drain covers, white line road markings and things like that. You get 230mm discs on both the front and rear wheels. Now, while the stopping power isn't incredible, it's still more than enough for a scooter. Dunlop Scoot Smart tyres are fitted as standard on this bike, and they come in an extra wide 13-inch profile, which will give you even better road feel and handling. New for 2025 is a refined suspension setup. This has made the bike more stable, particularly with extra weight on board. So when you're riding 2-up or with luggage, this is going to be particularly handy for delivery drivers, things like that. Now the front forks have had a little bit of a tweak, but the biggest update is with the rear shocks. They've got an extra 5mm of travel. They've also moved on to a progressive spring as opposed to a linear. And you also get a hand cranked preload adjustment as well.
Now, suspension wise, I've got to say, for a little scooter, it feels very planted actually. Obviously we're getting little vibrations as we're going along, but the big reinforcement, there's been a slight adjustment on things like the oil on the front forks, but the big adjustment is on the rear shocks. So the rear shocks, they've got 5mm longer on the stroke. They've also got progressive springs now as opposed to linear springs, and they've also got a little hand crank preload adjuster for the first time. Now, the suspension settings they've said are to help with things like 2-up, or if you're carrying luggage. And obviously the emphasis on the rear is great if you're going to be a delivery driver, because delivery drivers, as we all know, have got big old top boxes on the back which carry all sorts of things. Now, for a little £3,600 125 scooter, I've got to say, along this bumpy road, it's more than adequate.
As part of the design of the new 2025 NMAX, the entire lighting system has had a complete redesign. It's sharper, it's tighter, the lines are better, and most importantly, it is moved completely over to an LED system. Now, the 12-volt socket, which was previously in the little glove compartment on the front, has now been upgraded to a USB-C socket. Connectivity with your phone via the MyRide app is still there as before. It gives you minimal information for things like calls and texts. Also allows you to do things like set your parking location. If you decide to opt for a TechMax version, which will be coming slightly later in the year, you do get a upgraded TFT dash, which gives you increased connectivity, as well as a sat-nav option when you pair it with your phone. Oh, and just like the previous model, this NMAX is also running on a key fob as opposed to a manual key. So this is the big question. Last year, the NMAX was the best-selling motorcycle of 2024, and the Honda PCX was number 2. Now, this year, both manufacturers have brought out an updated model, and they're both going to be battling for that number 1 spot this year. However, here's why I think that the NMAX is going to be the better bike. Like I said, Honda has brought out an updated PCX model for 2025, and it's had a few nice upgrades as well. Improvements to the rear suspension, just like the new NMAX. The rear brake has been updated from a drum brake to a disc to match the NMAX, although on a smaller 220mm disc. And they've added a TFT dash as standard, which if you want on the NMAX, you have to opt for the slightly more expensive TechMax version. All of this comes in at $3,699, which is £100 more than the standard NMAX, but £200 less than the NMAX TechMax version. So like I said, if you want that TFT option on the NMAX, you need to go for the NMAX TechMax. That is £3,900 on the road, and you get that upgraded TFT dash, and you also get a premium seat as well. So the Honda PCX does have a tiny bit more power and a tiny bit more torque, but the NMAX is going to take the biscuit on performance specs because of that VVA. It's going to give you a much more linear torque curve. So off the line, the NMAX is going to be quicker and it's going to rev slightly lower. Now, because of this, it's going to offer a slightly better miles per gallon than the PCX. At just 132 kilograms, the NMAX is also 2 kilograms lighter than the PCX when you compare wet weights. With better brakes, you have 230mm discs as opposed to 220 on the Honda. And most importantly, the Yamaha's got 2-channel ABS. So like I said before, you've got individual ABS systems on the front wheel and the rear wheel. The Honda only unfortunately comes with ABS on the front, so that's not going to stop the back wheel from locking up. Finally, styling. Well, I mean, this is subjective, but personally, I think the NMAX for 2025 looks a lot more premium than what you're actually paying for. It looks a lot more modern, and it looks a lot cleaner than the PCX. Not only that, but you have more space on board than the PCX. I'm 6'2", and there's a lot more sort of space for me to get on.
So I am 6'2", and I have got quite a comfortable amount of leg room on this bike, in both a feet forward and feet back position, which is great. And here we are, home sweet home.
Look, I've got to say, I love this new NMAX. Yamaha have managed to make a more refined, upgraded, and a more premium bike, while at the same time actually reducing the price of it by about £200 from the previous model. At £3,600 for the standard and £3,900 for the Tech Max variant, I really don't think you can go wrong with this bike. Now, these are in store, available to order now, and the Tech Max will be coming soon, but are also available to order now. If you want any more information or if you want to order one of these, then please do get in touch. We offer nationwide delivery along with finance options. Now, all of our contact details are down in the caption below.